Onitsha drug market records casualties following chemical explosion.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we focus on the destruction of billboards and other campaign materials.
Now, electioneering campaigns are gathering pace, and political parties, along with the candidates, are leaving nothing to chance to sway the electorate in their favor.
Indeed, it's becoming a battle of words, but what is worrisome now is the attitude of some candidates, which observers describe as desperate. Some are said to be engaging in campaigns of calumny, while others, through their agents or their supporters, are destroying the posters, billboards, and campaign materials of their opponents.
And unfortunately, it is a trend that is generating controversy among political parties, as most of them have been at the receiving end of one incident of destruction of campaign materials or the other.
Now, in the last 2 months, a number of cases of the destruction of such materials have been recorded across the 18 political parties that are contesting for the different positions at the state and national levels.
In this case, just a few days ago, the Akwa Ibom State Police vehemently frowned at the development and warned the so-called political saboteurs to desist from defacing and destroying billboards and posters of opponents accordingly. The Commissioner of Police indicated that a special monitoring team had been set up to monitor, identify, arrest and prosecute those behind the undemocratic acts in the state.
Now, thugs are said to be at the heart of the matter. However, political parties are also trading words, pointing accusing fingers at one another with claims that the major parties are allegedly behind the vandalization incidents.
And for political watchers, these occurrences are likely to usher in an era of violence ahead of the 2023 general elections, Kinsley?
Well, that's true, Nadabo. Now, another issue that is worrisome is that posters, billboards, and campaign materials, which are an integral part of electioneering in any democratic setting, are usually priced exorbitantly for opposition parties as against what is usually obtainable. When we talk about pricing here, we are referring to the charges or levies that some state governments are now imposing for the display of campaign materials either on billboards or other locations.
And this is talking about taxes now,
Sure.
trying to improve the IGR there is.
Well, it's not a matter of improving your IGR. There are other ways of improving the IGR. You improve your IGR and then you kill off the opportunity for parties to effectively campaign.
And that's a good one anyway.
Yes, yeah.
And there are also allegations of destruction of campaign materials and attacks on supporters bearing campaign materials of opposition parties by members of the ruling political parties in some states.
Now, some analysts are contending that such situations create unacceptable norms of politicking and casting doubts on the tenets, the critical tenets of democracy, coupled, of course, with what it creates, namely the absence of a level playing field for the parties and the candidates.
And with barely 3 months to the elections, how can political parties and candidates galvanize support of the electorate without violence and destruction of campaign materials? What are the expected mechanisms to bring to book perpetrators of this act, and what should be the role of security agencies in instituting order in the political space? These and more issues we shall take a look at today on Good Morning Nigeria. I am Yusuf Nadabo.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I joined my colleague Nadabo to also welcome you to the program. And Nadabo, just by the way, last weekend there was a report of an incident that occurred in one of the states where somebody was trying to tear down the campaign material of a political party and a candidate, and the individual was electrocuted. And that, of course, should send lessons out there to all others. But for us on Good Morning Nigeria, we're live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, and in the course of Good Morning Nigeria, our usual complimentary segments will follow, and these include newspaper review and business. For now, Elizabeth Omoroye has the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Elizabeth.
Good morning, Kingsley and Nadabo. And here's the morning news. Sustainable peace is possible for Africa if leaders would incorporate the principle of adapting African solutions to Africa's problems. Former President of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo, stated this while addressing the ongoing session of the Pan-African Parliament in Midrand, South Africa.
This institution is not an unnecessary institution. It is an institution that will be part and parcel of the instrument that will lead us to the promised land.
Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed has appeared before the Senate Committee on Culture and Tourism to defend his ministry's 2023 budget proposal.
Your Excellency, you have spoken right to the challenges we are facing. I don't think I can improve on that. That with COVID-19, with poor funding, I mean, we could not do as much as we wish to do.
To climate matters, in the face of multiple climate shocks, Nigeria is sourcing international support to ramp up finance for climate change adaptation, plans and disaster risk reduction initiatives. It is a drive led by Nigeria's Ministers of Finance and Humanitarian Affairs at the United Nations Climate Conference in Egypt.
The objective is to be able to provide relevant disclosures in financial statements that will help us to attract investment finance for climate-friendly projects.
We address these issues, which is the adaptation aspect of it, whereby we support people to regain back their livelihoods.
And the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs has promised to provide technical assistance to the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, for effective management of disasters across the country. Head of the Nigeria office, Tron Jessen, stated this when he engaged the management of the agency on proactive ways of reducing the consequences of the menace.
What we are looking at is potentially then to provide support at the federal level, both in terms of assessments, information management.
I'm looking forward to the support of UN OCHA, both materially and through the sharing of your vast wealth of experience in global best practices in managing a complex emergency as we confronted with.
A chemical explosion at Onitsha Drug Market Bridge has killed unconfirmed number of persons, with goods worth millions of naira gutted by fire. The fire was said to have started at about 12:30 p.m. Tuesday, and the Director, Anambra State Fire Service, Dr. Martin Abani, who confirmed the incident through a telephone call, said he deployed firefighters to the scene as soon as he received the distress call. Dr. Abani attributed the fire outbreak to chemical explosion. Meanwhile, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, says it has uncovered plans by some group of persons to introduce a lethal synthetic opioid, fentanyl, which is 100 times stronger than tramadol, into the Nigerian markets. The agency is cautioning the public on the illicit substance, noting that it is capable of causing mass casualties among the youth population, has been targeted by the cartels. The agency, however, says all necessary assets have been deployed to monitor the cartels involved in these latest threats. And the federal government says 5 million Nigerians have been provided with renewable electricity generated in the off-grid sphere across the country under the Nigeria Electrification Project (NEP). A statement released on the level of implementation of the project shows that more than 900,000 solar home systems, 67 mini-grid projects, and 26 container solar energy parks for hospitals have been deployed to benefiting communities. The World Bank and the African Development Bank are supporting the project with a grant of $550 million so as to boost electricity access in the country, especially with renewable energy. And that's the morning news. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Nadabo after this break. Just stay with us.
When times are tough, we know that as a mother, one thing you should never compromise on is your family's oral health because they deserve the best. Oral-B all-round protection. Its great value, it protects your mouth from harmful bacteria and also protects you against tooth holes and gum problems which can lead to tooth loss. It strengthens your family's teeth and gives them all-round protection. So remember, protect their future. Oral-B for healthier, stronger teeth in just 1 week.
To every politician, as the campaigns gain momentum and passions begin to rise, remember, the errors of your opponents do not make you a success. Do not run down your opponent and inflame passions to violence between and among your supporters. What counts is what you plan to do for the electorate and how you intend to relieve the sufferings and bring succor. Nigeria is in dire need of patriotic leaders at all levels, leaders who will make national development their priority. Concentrate on telling the electorate what you intend to do when you get into office. Focus on making your vision clear to the electorate. Don't engage in verbal abuses, fake news or speeches. Keep dealing with issues that will bring progress. You win the hearts and minds of the people by being above board, by being civil, patriotic, and showing empathy. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. A message from the National Orientation Agency.
Big day ahead.
New Ovaltine 3-in-1. Smart choice for smart kids.
What is happening? Your eyes are red. You are armed with a machete and a gun. See, I am angry and I can't even contain it. See, my guy, calm down, calm down. See, Oga, I have planned to go and destroy these people's businesses in the city. I have to retaliate for what they've done at their own place. They cannot eat their cake and have it now, never. If you destroy their business here and they destroy that of those close to you over there, especially that your brother who sends you steady cash, how would you survive? Would your dreams be on hold? See, what you're saying is correct, but I'm still angry. The best way is to embrace peace. With peace and unity,
my people, let us embrace
place.
peace and unity. Let's learn to live as brothers and sisters for a progressive, prosperous nation. This message is brought to you from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Every day in our country, senior citizens are discriminated against, disparaged, and treated with disdain by those who ought to respect them. We are all complicit in the way we have treated the elderly members of our society as institutions, families, or members of a shared society. Every time senior citizens get offered less than they deserve for the work they do because they are old, poor, and desperate, we are failing them. Senior citizen loses a child, and wow, they must be responsible for their death. Every time a senior citizen gets labeled a witch, is called mad, and shooed out of the way because they have no memory of where they were headed and look unkempt, we are failing them. We say, abeg, it all old, make it do die, make everybody for rest, to ailing parents, uncles and aunts. That's discrimination. That is neglect. When you see an old woman getting beat up and being accused of witchcraft, do not turn the other way. Stop and teach people that white hairs, wrinkles and hunchbacks are no evidence of witchcraft. Aging comes with a memory decline. Sometimes it's not out of place to have elderly people lose their way, forget details of their lives, and how to properly take care of themselves. When they get to this stage, they deserve your empathy, not scorn. Our ailing fathers, mothers, aunties, and uncles are deserving of quality healthcare and peaceful transition. Make their last moments memorable. Senior citizens have paid their dues. They deserve your care. Stop all forms of discrimination against them today.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and this morning we're discussing destruction of billboards and campaign materials. Well, let's start off with business. The World Bank announces a new multi-partner fund that will provide grants for verifiable emissions reduction and expand funding sources for global public good. Let's join Kunle Adeye for details.
The World Bank has announced a new multi-partner fund that will pool funding from the global community that will include donor countries, the private sector, and foundations to achieve pathways to greenhouse gas emission reduction. The World Bank announced this in Egypt. The Scaling Climate Action by Lowering Emissions Scale Partnership will provide grants for verifiable emission reductions and expand the funding sources for global public goods. The World Bank insists climate finance is in need of new mechanisms that will pull funding from the global community to actualize real reductions in greenhouse gas emissions across the developing world. The Scaling Climate Action by Lowering Emissions Scale will deploy results-based climate finance where countries receive grant payments for achieving pre-agreed, verifiable results, drawing on 20 years of World Bank Group experience in this area. It will also support countries to build a track record of generating emissions reductions from impactful programs and policies that they can apply towards their national emission reduction targets. It will also yield excess credits that can be offered in carbon markets with the potential to unlock additional private sector funding. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeye.
Many thanks, Kunle Adeye, for the business news and Good Morning Nigeria. Up next, newspaper review.
Okay, we have three newspapers here this morning. We'll try to look at them and see what they contain, especially their front pages. Let's start with the Daily Trust. The Daily Trust newspaper this morning, this beautiful Wednesday morning. On the front page of it, we have the following stories. Right under the masthead, we have this story on page 19 that says, marketers push for 200 naira per liter as petrol sells above 180 naira in Abuja. Marketers push for 200 naira per liter, that is, as petrol sells above 180 naira in Abuja. And on page 6, court convicts EFCC chairman for contempt. And then it says the chairman, that is Bauer, appeals the ruling. Now on page 24, PDP moves to reconcile Atiku Bala Muhammad. Page 24, PDP moves to reconcile Atiku and Bala Muhammad. And the big story here this morning on the Daily Trust is still talking about politics. It says governorship race, uncertainty over fate of PDP APC candidates in 4 states. Uncertainty over fate of PDP APC candidates in 4 states. And the writers are, PDP has no candidate in Zamfara, according to a quote. Binani, Buacha are able to fight to reclaim tickets. And the final rider is INEC must stand by rules of the game, says Downs. And we get details of that on page 4. But looking at the front page still, right here we have these 5 candidates from the political parties and from the states. And they include Alhaji Dauda Lawal Dare, a PDP from Zamfara State. And then you have Senator Emmanuel Boacha, APC from Taraba State. And of course, Ladi Adebutu, PDP from Ogun State. And then we also have Aisha Dairu Benani here, APC from Adamawa State. And of course, you have the last there, Alhaji Dauda Lawal Dare, PDP from Zamfara State. These are all candidates with court rulings against them and their political parties. And finally, on the Daily Trust, to the left-hand side, we have these stories. Bandits abduct 20 children in Niger State, demand 40 million naira. Details on page 5. And on page 6, ASU rejects half salaries, Mills legal action. And finally, on the Daily Trust, on page 4, Hush Puppy backs 11 years, 3 months jail in U.S. Hush Puppy backs 11 years, 3 months jail in the United States. Details of that on page 4. Kingsley?
Okay, let's also look at some of the headlines on the front page of Leadership newspaper. Another petrol pump price hike imminent. That's according to marketers. That's below the nameplate of the Leadership. Half pay. ASU ends meeting, says no more strike. And Bauchi governor accuses Atiku of unfair treatment. PDP flag bearer meets governor over grievances. We will win 2023 presidency despite opposition. That's according to IU. We wish you good luck. Wike replies. Tinubu, Atiku, Obi, others to attend the candidates presidential town hall series. And free education policy, El-Rufai orders refund of school fees to pupils. And also EFCC appeals court order committing chairman to prison. And very quickly, also from the front page of the Blueprint newspaper, let's take two of the headlines. Contempt, that's the kicker. We have appealed judgment sentencing me to Kuje prison. That's according to Bauer, the chairman of the EFCC. Court orders IGZ to execute verdict. EFCC released Range Rover to applicant and 40 million naira being processed. That's according to the spokesperson of the EFCC. Zamfara 2023 governorship, like 2019, Matawale may benefit from court pronouncement. Court nullifies PDP primaries, says party has no candidate. APC has judgment sure of victory. There are other stories there. And right at the foot of the front page says half salaries, varsity lecturers, not casual workers, ASU tells federal government. So, Nadabo, those are the headlines that we have on the front pages of the papers this morning. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just trying to take a cue from your last story there. ASU tells federal government their, workers not really casual workers, not really. They're really not casual workers as such. And looking at the assumption, they say they may be going to the courts again for all this. It seems the last is yet to be seen about the ASU strike.
Yes, they're in court. They're in court, and this is one of the issues they have, of course, before them in court. And so we'll see how it gets to be resolved, because the federal government is insisting on an implementation of the no work, no pay policy that is enshrined in the Trade Disputes Act. So, but this one, of course, arises from the fact that after they got the order from the Court of Appeal directing them to obey the order of the National Industrial Court, ASU, of course, did not immediately return to work. It took them several days. They said they were meeting with their various chapters. I spoke about this the day before or so on Good Morning Nigeria, so I don't want to sound like a broken record or that it's a personal grasp. It's just a matter of illustrating or illuminating the issues for the benefit of our viewers. Let's take a look at this. You say you are not casual workers. How do you then illustrate this? The example I gave was, this month is November. So let us assume we are dealing with the month of October. If you are appointed, say, into the university system, say, I'll give you an example now. On the 20th of October, 2022, do you expect to be paid for October 1 to October 19th, when you were not in the employment of the institution? Of course, you will be paid from October 20th to October 31st. And if it is rolled over to another month, you then consolidate it. In other words, your pay for October will be prorated according to the number of days that you worked. Now, the argument will also arise, no, we're already in employment. But when you went on strike, you suspended your employment by virtue of the provision in the Trade Disputes Act that no work, no pay. It is not as if you resigned, you didn't resign. So it is virtually, that's in the manner of speaking, it was suspension. So if you, therefore you suspended it and the rule says no work, no pay, it means that for the period you didn't work, that is what is, of course, the dispute before the courts, you will not be paid for that particular period. Why am I saying this?
Go
If
ahead.
you say that, the example I gave, you were employed on the 20th of October, and you didn't get paid for 20th to 31st, but you are now insisting that you should be paid for from the 1st to the 20th or to the 19th, when you were not in the employment of service. At the time you are exiting, assuming you were also born on the 20th of October and you are a full professor and you are supposed to exit at the age of 70, will you exit on the 1st of October or you will exit on the 20th of October? Do you get the logic? So
I do really.
it's part of what we said. Part of what we said was that, look, ASU should be wary at the time of being in contempt of the order of the Court of Appeal. There was an intervening public holiday, but then they proceeded still to be holding meetings XYZ. The order was given on the Thursday or a Friday, if I remember the details. If you had complied immediately, so we are calling off the strike, you now said you were going to consult with your various chapters. And the question I raised was, you joined issues with the federal government when the federal government took you to the National Industrial Court. At the time you were joining issues with the federal government, you did not consult with all your chapters. The chapters had already donated the powers to you to act on their behalf. So if arising from the litigation, there was now an order, did you need to consult with all others before you obey the court? This was not arising from negotiations at all with the government. It was on the basis of that court order, which leads us to the issue of content. You can see what has happened now with respect to the EFCC chairman. Again, that's another worrisome development.
Too, yeah.
And by the way, in the administration of justice, contempt of court is one of the most serious offenses that anybody can commit. Of course, you commit contempt either in the face of the court or out of the face of the court. And in this case, it said there was a decision that was given sometime in 2018 for the EFCC. The issue was challenged by a former director in one of the services who was accused of receiving some gratification on account of contracts that were awarded. They seized this, what people popularly refer to as range spot. And then, of course, also confiscated this 40 million naira. The court held that, look, you didn't have a case. So they quashed that case and directed that the EFCC should refund the 40 million naira as well as the range spot. Now, from one of the headlines we read on Blueprint newspaper, EFCC says they have returned the Range Rover, but they are processing the 40 billion naira. Well, Bauer says he has already appealed. And by the way, this is not personal to Bauer, as it were. It's in his official capacity.
Yeah, it's a corporate
yes,
one,
as chairman of EFCC, because the question would arise: oh, you were not chairman of EFCC in 2018. So why are they attaching this to you? So the office of the chairman, whoever is occupying it, that should have given the appropriate directives. And let's not, again, let me repeat what I said, that in the administration of justice, contempt of court is one of the most serious offenses you can commit. You saw what happened to Jacob Zuma, the former South African president, who was jailed for 15 months in South Africa. And what happened? He committed contempt of court by refusing to testify before a graft inquiry.
And that's really the bottom line indeed. Of course, talking about contempt, as you mentioned, it cannot go beyond that. Once there is contempt, then impunity sets in. And that's why you have these problems. Most of the problems we have in this country is talking about impunity, and that's one of them.
Yeah, but they say, EFCC, they are saying that they have appealed that particular decision with respect to the contempt conviction. They have appealed it, and I imagine also in that appeal, there will also be an application for a stay of execution. In other words, the EFCC chairman will not be operating from Kuje prison just yet.
No, not really. And this political story on Daily Trust says uncertainty over fate of PDP APC candidates in 4 states. And you have a number of them here, 5 of them who have really been having court cases against them, really talking about the PDP APC candidates in Zamfara, Taraba, Ogun, Adama, and these states. Really, what really is therein as those really in the analysts and political observers insist that INEC should really stand by its rules, which of course should be the norm. But, Binani and Bocha Adebuto are really fighting to claim their tickets and a host of other issues like that. What's really in stock for these political parties and candidates?
Nadabo, I tell you something. You have to be an interested party to keep track of the litigation arising from the primaries ahead of the 2023 elections. Just too many of those cases. A couple of days ago, INEC announced that it is a respondent to at least 600 cases arising from the conduct of primaries by political parties. On Good Morning Nigeria, we had discussed on a number of occasions internal democracy, which we then relabeled the management of political parties. But political parties appear almost incapable of conducting free, fair, and credible primaries. One dispute after another. Sometimes, with the so-called parallel primaries, you belong to a faction, I belong to a faction. We will hold our different congresses. You go and conduct your own primaries. I will conduct my own. We will go to court to say which committee, which of the congresses was the genuine one to have conducted primaries. Your court will say you were the one. I will go on appeal and say the court of appeal will say no, I'm the one that should have conducted. They will go to the Supreme Court. This is just, it just tells you the acute competition that you have at the state level. But it's not just the competition, it is the filthy nature of the competition that the political parties appear incapable of organizing themselves. And watch out, assuming there are glitches in the conduct of the general elections next year by INEC, the political parties will be the ones to mount the rooftops and declare that INEC is incompetent, INEC is XYZ. But look, how many members do you have as a political party? Of course, a good number of the political parties do not have an appropriate register of their members. So when they are even conducting their affairs, you don't know on whose behalf they are speaking. But as I said, Nadabo, you have to be an interested party to keep track of these issues that are now before. And they clog the courts. And I think that at some point we will have to have a national conversation around judicial review of party matters.
that will be really timely when the time comes, of course.
That's right.
And I think we'll try to make you one of the resource persons there.
Well, thanks. But very quickly, let us also, as the media, be wary of the kind of stories that we push out. There's a report in one of the headlines there saying that petrol is selling above 180 naira in Abuja. I bought fuel yesterday in Abuja, and the pump price 180 naira a liter at Bobo in the city. 180, not above 180 naira. The NNPC stations are selling at 179. And then the less we focus, I believe, the less we focus, I'm not referring again to the hypodermic needle theory, but which was, of course, in the past when we studied Mascom, to say, once you say fuel price is now 200 naira, then you have an immediate knock-on on the prices of goods and services. Just a little marginal increase. We have seen that from 175 to 179, 180. You go there, you buy. But fuel, of course, is not readily available at all the filling stations. But no one, at least from where I bought yesterday, is selling about 180. Just 180, a difference, a marginal difference. We hope that if the price comes down, it will also be so. And all this comment about naira hitting 900 naira at the parallel market, again, we're just giving vent to speculators of forex. Those who are buying at 900 naira per dollar. What is the use? Well, we'll see what happens once the old naira notes get out of circulation by the 31st of January next year. I'm sure those who have bullion vans will have used the opportunity of taking those bullion vans to go and exchange it, and then you will be stuck with the dollars that you have. And at some point, you will need naira, and then we will see how it plays out. Right.
And lest we forget, really, Kingsley, thinking about the story on fuel hike, should not forget that, of course, some of these stories are sponsored. But all the same, whatever they are, just keep your comments. I know you want to talk anyway.
That's right.
It's time we call it quits on this segment. We'll now take a break. Good Morning Nigeria returns in a moment. Stay with us.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, before we commence our conversation, which is on the destruction of billboards and other campaign materials. Let's listen into this background compiled by our correspondent, Joseph Osen.
28 September this year opened doors for political campaigns ahead of the 2023 general elections. And indeed, some political parties have hit the ground running after flagging off presidential campaigns. Apart from rallies and meetings, campaign billboards, banners and posters are some of the powerful tools politicians use to speak to the electorate. While these pictures and inscriptions avail the public with identities and intent of the political parties and their candidates in respective seats to be contested for, the acts of defacing and destroying the materials by opposing supporters have continued to hit the polity and build tension ahead of elections. Some analysts believe the situation is worsening by actions of ruling state government who turn blind eyes when saboteurs damage those of oppositions. Others feel the decision by some state governments to charge exorbitant prices for mounting billboards and pasting of posters and other political campaign materials is perceived as favoring politicians with better financial muscles, thus infuriating supporters of those with less. For instance, ahead of the 2023 general elections, Kogi and Anambra states have placed a bill of 10 million naira for posters or to erect billboards of presidential candidates. Whatever the reasons, the attitude of engaging in campaigns of calumny by supporters of some politicians is also seen as uncivilized and undemocratic that can only fuel violence. But why has defacing and destruction of billboards and posters of opponents remained a strategy for some politicians and their supporters? Has the law been too kind to perpetrators? And what are state governments doing right to curb the ugly trends? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will analyze these issues and speak to the implications and the way forward ahead of the 2023 general elections.
Joseph Osen, thank you very much again for that backgrounder. We have guests with us here in the studios as well as another guest joining us via Zoom. Two of the guests that we have this morning are regulars on Good Morning Nigeria. But let me introduce first a lawyer and former director of publicity and voter education at the Independent National Electoral Commission. Oluwole Osaze, we're glad to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Always a pleasure. Good morning.
And also here with us in the studios is Dr. Babagana Adam, a director, Department of Outdoor Advertisement and Signage in the Federal Capital Territory. Dr. Adam, we're glad to have you this morning.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. Good morning.
And we also have Habila Joshak, a retired DIG in charge of operations. Thank you for joining us, Habila.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And then from Magodo in Lagos is Emmanuel Ajifo. He is the president, Outdoor Advertising Association of Nigeria. He joins us via Zoom. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. And still from Lagos, this time around from our network studio, we have Joe Honora. He is the Director, Registration, Advertising, that is Regulatory Council of Nigeria, ACON. Good to have you on the program. Hello? Can't get us? Okay. Once we fix that, then we now get you, and then we become part of the conversation. You're welcome, at least. Kingsley, what do we have this early morning? Where are we starting from?
Well, let's begin. We didn't get the audio quite clearly from our Lagos network studios. I believe that there's some delay. Our engineers will sort that out. Let's just have a general understanding of the issues around campaign materials. And happily, Oluwole Osaze, a lawyer who at some point was also a director legal at INEC and in charge of publicity and voter education at the whole gamut. Osaze, tell us something about campaign materials, their types, and and what the law says about the protection of such materials.
Yeah, Kingsley, before Osazi, gives us his own perspective on that, he seems to have a little problem fixing his audio somewhere. So we'll get back to you later on.
We hope our audio system is not being vandalized by. Well, I just wonder. So if the engineers indicate that to us, it means that we don't have it from outside of our studios. And is the Zoom okay? If the Zoom is fine, let him come on. Let's begin with him, if you don't mind, Adabo. Yeah.
So let's start with the Zoom, right?
Let's begin with the Zoom. We'll introduce Emmanuel Ajufor, who is the President, Outdoor Advertising Association of Nigeria. He's joining us via Zoom from Agodo in Lagos. Emmanuel Ajufor, if you are there and you can hear us, just give us a situational report, as it were, of what you are getting to learn from your members with regard to the damage to various billboards and the challenges that your members are having with respect to display political advertising.
Okay, so thank you again for having me. Every 4 years, we go through this cycle. The challenges come from different angles, and I'm happy about the people that you have brought to discuss this critical topic. As an association, we anticipated that this kind of thing will happen, and so we decided to write to our partners, the signage agencies, to tell them that they should allow for a level playing field. Some of our partners have responded to us, and they have told us that everybody is free to practice within the laws that the various signage agencies have set up. But what we then find out is that they're putting some impediments along the road. For instance, the only legal body that is supposed to vet any advertising material is ALCON. But what we see is that these signage agencies, we insist that we bring our materials to them to vet. And we have told them that they're not in a position to vet. Now, that is a delay tactic for them to prevent those who they do not want to advertise in their region. That is one of the things that we have faced. The second one is that, and this is across most of the states, is that the parties in power will not allow the other parties to have space, and they won't do it officially. What you then see is that when you want to put up your boards, your materials, some talks will tell you, if it, assuming this is a PDP state and you want to put an APC material, they will tell you that if you put up this, it will be vandalized. You are only allowed to put up PDP. That is if it's a PDP state. And same with an APC state. So we have all these challenges. Based on this, we decided to write even to INEC, to the police, because when they vandalize our materials, they're also destroying our properties. We feel strongly that it is not allowing for a level playing ground. Only yesterday, I got a report that one of the thugs died in Ibadan when he was trying to remove an opposition party's material. He got electrocuted. So we are not happy about this development. Politics should not be a do or die affair. People should be allowed to engage properly and sell the contestants. So at the public, we have take decisions based on what they have had from all of them. So it is good that we are talking about this. Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll keep talking about that. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Coming back to the studio here, let's look further into, situations around the country and they see what's really happening. From the FCT, that's from Lagos there. Let's hear from the FCT, of course, and what the situation has been. Talking about these billboards and their destruction. One major thing he said is talking about, referring to the fact that states being controlled by political parties tend to, tilt towards allowing only their political party to mount billboards and some other campaign materials, while others do not really, of course, and they even warn that when you do that, it's at your own peril. Tell us, what's the situation in the FCT, Babagana?
Thank you very much, Senadabo and my other colleagues. I think I wish the reporter that did the background report has driven around Abuja, because you will agree with me that across Abuja, you see all parties on the board, especially even on our prime roads, because we put up a process, because the process is like a tripartite process. You have APCON, you have the practitioners, and you have us as regulators. That is Abuja as Federal Capital Territory Administration. So what we do is, once the campaign was lifted September 28, you fill your form, you bring your montage, you apply for the locations you want, and we check on the ACON, that's Advertising Regulatory Council of Nigeria certification, for you to expose the material. Because the materials have to be decent, they have to be legal, without insulting other parties. So across the board, when you look at FCT, almost all the parties that applied have been given the locations they asked for. So in FCT, that's the center of unity. We go on merit and we go by the guidelines and we go by the regulations. So things are okay. But I don't know if that background of vandalization, I think we need to look beyond partisan politics. There are a lot of other issues attached to it. There are scavengers who move around, even without politicking, stealing those materials belonging to hardworking Nigerian businessmen. That's the practitioners, which my president represents, Mr. Ajufo, Emmanuel Ajufo. So people are stealing that. So when it comes to political error, it can have some coincidences of stealing those expensive flags. So it goes beyond, in my own opinion, just sabotaging the other party. It goes beyond just personal interest, but it goes beyond, it goes with morals and then law enforcement within community. So we need to look at the aspect of community policing, engage the divisional police officers within localities to ensure that this vandalization does not take place. Just to make a point, when you move around the Federal Capital City, you see all the infrastructure that monies have been invested in are being stolen on a daily basis. Even the rails on the bridges are taken. So the billboards will not be an exception where scavengers and vandals are prone to that. So I am not saying they are not connected to political error as well. When somebody is already ready to sabotage the billboards, and now politics come and people are trying to fund them to continue with that heinous act, it keeps on going on. So in a nutshell, in FCT, we don't exclude any political party as long as you follow the process. And the process is simple. You apply, indicate the location, the number of boards you want to put, whether it is lampposts that is directly under our control that we call the first party. But if it is a third party, as long as the practitioner is registered by us as a practitioner practicing in the FCT, because like we license them to practice in Abuja, just like Lagos license some other practitioners. So it has to come through them. And for them to expose the material, we don't stop them from exposing any legal, legitimate advertisement of any of the political parties. So that is the ACON that regulates the content. We just regulate the location. And in addition, if the practitioner has not paid and has not registered with us, we will not allow any illegality to happen within the capital city. It could be any party. We are to also ensure that the environment is protected and there is no blight and obstruction of traffic. Because in the report you could see in some junctions, there are multiple of signages that clutter the junctions that can cause accident. And some young people, school children, can be knocked off by the car because the view is obliterated. So whoever has his billboard there, any party, whether the ruling party or the opposition party, we take it down, we inform you, we give you 7 days notice. That is if it is approvable. But if it is not approvable, you can't just put your signage on the middle of the road and expect me to give you the required notice. It will be removed outright, and you'll be informed why we removed it if you pretend you don't know. So this is the tax we carry.
All right, thank you very much, Babagana, for your explanation. We'll return to you presently. Now, back to Oluwole Osazelzi. We understand his mic is okay. Now, I had asked the question about just a general idea about campaign and other informational materials ahead of elections and what the law does in terms of protecting such materials. So,
thank you. Let me start with the Electoral Act. The Electoral Act has from Section 91 to I think about Section 95 spelled out the mode of campaign, what is expected of people going to processions and campaigns. And it talks about things like the use of temperate language, you don't use abusive language, and you behave in an orderly and lawful manner. It does not speak specifically to synergies, to campaign materials or such, but the tone and the spirit of the law is that you campaign in a decent and progressive manner. But having said that, one must also look at situate this in terms of the general law. I'm happy DIG Habila is here, retired. You know, he's worked with INEC for quite a number of years, several electoral cycles. So people have full knowledge of the full gamut of it. It's like electoral violence. It can be an offense under the Electoral Act, it can be an offense under the general law, the penal code or the criminal code. So it's the same thing here. The fact that the Electoral Act has not spoken specifically to billboards, for example, doesn't mean that it is outside the scope of regulation. There are laws. Dr. Wagner has been very forthcoming in terms of an outline, the framework, legal framework set up for these things. So you see that malicious damage is a criminal offense in any part of the country. And when you go destroying a billboard, that is an offense, and you can be charged under the regular penal laws and sent to prison or fined, as the case may be. It might be a custodial sentence, it might just be a fine, but it depends on what the act actually says and what the judge feels. So you don't, electoral act says don't use abusive, intemperate, indecorous language. Some of those things are also criminal offenses under the regular law. So everybody must be very careful about these things. But also, I think Dr. Wagner spoke about that as well. You also do not disobey the law by erecting illegal billboards. That can also be there. And if you do so, it can and should be removed because you are breaking the law. So I think it's a very complex issue. We have to look at the things. You don't indiscriminately just behave as if there are no laws guiding the process. There are lots of laws guiding the process. So let's be careful. A lot of agencies, state government, federal government say, look, to exhibit a billboard, you have to pay, it has to be registered, you have to give dimensions for it, and there's a cost put to it. So if you do not comply with those things, then you are breaking the law. You will not be allowed to put up that, and if you do put it up, it will be pulled down. So let us be careful. I think here we're more concerned about those legitimate ones, those legal ones that have been erected on a legal basis. But don't come to me and say, oh, my billboard was pulled down. In my house, my waste bin and dumpsters are full of posters. I don't think those things were authorized. And I didn't do it, but without permission from me or from, I'm sure, the authorities. Yeah. So those things are unlawful. So if somebody goes and pulls down those things, I don't think they're doing the wrong thing. The environment is littered by all sorts of campaign materials, which ought not to be. So there are two ways to it. First is that you, as the politician, as the political party, as the candidate, must ensure you comply with all the laws in erecting and setting up your billboards and campaign materials. But having done so, you deserve the protection of law enforcement agencies and the regulatory bodies that your materials must equally be protected. So we must look at those two, and then you might come to, well, are the charges for billboards and are they ridiculous? Are they too high? That's a different kettle of fish. Again, that's another dimension to the problem.
We'll talk about the charges later in the course of this program because that's one other issue that is really of concern. Let's go over to Joe Honora there, and the Director Registration of the Advertising Regulatory Council of Nigeria. You've heard what the two guests have said, and of course talking about the situation and what the law says, and what exactly have been the situation in some other states and the FCT. Tell us, against the background of the fact that these are lawful issues, these are things that deals with the law and deals with the public, and of course it's talking about security and safety, and of course talking about how to win votes from the electorate as campaigns heat up. Tell us, what is the the exact situation of the law as regards the act, or the Arcon Act that has been that repealed the Arcon Act in 2022. What does it say as regards this issue? We're talking about destruction of billboards and campaign materials. We've got to have that from the the law as INEC puts it, and of course, what does it say in Arcon? With Joe Honora there. Then let's come back to the studio and then continue whenever we're able to sort that out. We'll get back to the Advertising Regulatory Council of Nigeria and hear its own its views about what the law says. DIG, you've heard what the other guests say. We're talking about how to deal with this situation. It's really not a welcome development. It's been part of Nigerian political, campaigns all the while since, the First Republic to date. But it seems as just like the electoral process evolves and improves every day, these very aspects seem not to be getting the much attention it requires. By looking at how it is not being abated and people are still moving on and then doing the negatives all the while. From your own experience, do you see this as a point of reference always, talking about whenever politics comes, people start going around vandalizing opponents, billboards, and looking at the state's position too, while ruling parties insist on, not allowing other political parties to mount their billboards and campaign freely. How do you see this?
Yes, it's a very negative development that people would come together or, grow some kind of members of maybe a political party that specializes in bringing down, some of the billboards that has the, the name, the picture of some other political parties. I think it's a very negative development, and I think the various political parties must ensure that their people are educated and are prevented from actually going to bring down advertising materials that have been placed by other political parties. In other words, the people that are responsible for enforcing rules guiding such things should also ensure that people do not go arbitrarily and then place these advertising materials. And I say again that I think it should be given an attention so as not to whip sentiment and also to hit the system. But for the security agencies, it will be very difficult for you to begin to mobilize some security agencies, whether it is the police, whether it is the civil defense, and what have you. It's not possible for you to mobilize and let them pay attention to such things, because it's not going to work very well, because a lot of them already are overstretched to they cannot be taken out from responsibilities that are even more cogent than this one that is just coming up. So I would rather suggest that the various individuals that would want to put that must ensure that they have the approval of the authority that is responsible, and also that they should also let the police, while patrolling, all security agencies on patrol must pay attention to that, but to deploy directly will not be possible.
Well, retired DIG Habila Joshua, thank you very much from your for your perspective. I was just wondering, are you suggesting that it is difficult to enforce the law against malicious damage to property?
No,
It's it because if I have these posters cost money to print in the first instance, and they also cost money to post. And billboards, of course, are also very expensive. Not just the stand for that's why it's a board, but also for the display of the material. Now, I know that of course, it will be unexpected to think that policemen or civil defense officers will man every square inch space where these campaign materials are located. But there have been instances of confrontation at the points of destruction of these materials, where political thugs are pulling down the materials of opponents, and say a person has video evidence of such. What would be the reaction of the law enforcement agencies?
No, the law enforcement agencies have that responsibility of ensuring that materials of such and any other one should not be tolerated. Nobody that is seen committing a crime in the presence or purview of a police officer or any other security agencies that have the responsibility, you don't need any permission. They should be able to arrest them and then take them to the station and then get all the relevant law that guides this, and then they should be processed through the justice system if it's possible for them to be prosecuted. Well, I'm not saying that the police should be adamant, but I'm saying that what is happening now, sooner or later you would see people asking the police to deploy men to the billboards, and I'm just saying it from all experiences that this is not going to work that way, but that the policemen on patrol, or if there's a report made, the police officer and policemen have the right to dash to that particular point and effect arrest.
Thank you so much, Habila. Let's move over to Emmanuel Ajufo. At least he will give us more insight into this. Emmanuel Ajufo, if you're with us, the politicians are the ones at the center of this. And of course, it's their material that are being sort of placed for adverts and campaigns. And of course, their material that are being vandalized or such. And those who vandalize these are thugs, political thugs, one would say. And some extent as being put forward by Baba Gana here, that some are just scavengers, looking for how to make ends meet if they are naturally thieves anyway, because they are stealing other people's property. But nonetheless, let's look at it from the political point of view. And these politicians, Ajufo, are your clients, of course, because the Outward Advertising Association of Nigeria deal with them directly, and of course your agents work with them. In trying to secure this advice and get these jobs, are there no sort of, some bylaws or laws or whatever that guides, the erection of this and their protection specifically in the deals that you go into with these politicians?
But if I get you right, as practitioners, we see politicians as our clients, and we see their campaigns as normal campaigns, because we see them as marketing to Nigerians as other products market to Nigerians. The idea is for them to win at the end of the day. Now, as I said earlier on, The laws of the land says that before you put any campaign outside there, it has to be vetted by ALCON. ALCON is the one that decides what is fit and proper to go out to the public domain. Now, I also need to correct an impression. The politicians do not own billboards. The director, our director in Abuja said, before you put up a billboard, you seek the consent of the relevant authorities, in this case, under him. And you are given a license to have your boards. Now, those boards are built for campaigns, including political campaigns. Political campaigns are seasonal, so we don't go about building new boards because political campaign has come up. No, we don't do that. We use our existing boards to run the campaigns. Now, what happens is that the rates that we're supposed to pay for the political campaigns are also same for what we pay for normal campaigns. And everybody that is operating legally in any of the states has a right to display the political campaigns once it has been approved by ALCON. That is one. Now, like I said earlier on, the states, we have written to the states, and they have come back to us to say that there's a level playing field. That is the official comment that they have given to us. But in practice, that is not what is happening. What is happening is that because a lot of our governors operate as if they are emperors, they will tell the managers of the signage agencies that they should not allow any opposition to come. So instead of putting it in writing, they will tell you, you cannot put this. And if you do, talks will come and remove those campaigns. So even while we are working within our legal bounds, there are some things that the various political parties do, especially those who are in power in those states, that makes it very, makes the operating environment to be imbalanced for other people to benefit from. And that, I think, is what the issue is. We are beginning to have instances where a state, for instance, like I said, a PDP state will say, we buy all the billboards, don't give to another person. And we are saying that that also is not right. If you insist, because we talk about space, and because they also have powers to revoke your site, if you go against the signage agencies who have told you not to put any opposition campaign, yes, they will allow you, talks will remove it, but they can also revoke those sites. And so you see our members who are also professionals and who are businessmen who will not want to have their sites revoked as a result of running opposition campaigns, going to the line of the signage agencies. These are things that are not put in writing. Like I said, they have told us officially that there's a level playing ground, but in practice, there's no level playing ground in most of the places. And we believe that this kind of program should be used to send the right notes to these states that there should be level playing ground. It should be seen to be so. We should not have the behind the scene tactics that deny other politicians who are not the ruling parties in their various states to have a level playing field. That is the situation that we have today. Most of the states are doing that. Now, to talk about the vandalization that we are seeing, yes, I know that a lot of people steal our materials, but the way the political materials are destroyed is such that it's not the way that those materials that are being stolen by scavengers do it. Their own is that they come and destroy it. You see what is on, we are showing, you see that that is not the usual way that thieves who steal our materials, because we know those who have come to steal our materials for what they want to use it for. But in destruction of political campaigns, it is a deliberate and willful damage to make sure that those things are not supposed to be there. This is not what the normal scavengers will do. Scavengers will cut it off and use it for what they want to do. This one that we are seeing now on the board, you will see that it has not been removed. They just cut it, and the people that have done it have not even removed the materials for any use. It is just to destroy and prevent opposition from having visibility. So I think that we all know this, and it is important that we begin to change this attitude. for a better country.
Okay, thank you very much, Emmanuel Ajufor, for the further explanation that you have provided. I think there are a number of issues around this.
Yeah.
The absence of a level playing field, which is the ultimate consequence of the tactics that we are seeing deployed in the states. Unfortunately, we don't have any of the signage agencies from the states representing us except that of the FCT. And he has indicated that at the Center of Unity, this is what is playing out. Namely, everyone has an opportunity and a right, provided, of course, your material is legal, and then it will be exposed. We understand that our connection to our Lagos Network Center is fine now in terms of the audio. And Mr. Joe Eugene Onwara, who is of ALCON, the Advertising Regulatory Council of Nigeria. If you can hear us, I know there are a number of matters on the table right now for you to respond to. But one I would like you to kick off with has to do with what Emmanuel Ajufor raised earlier. That is the apparent tension between ALCON, which is the Advertising Regulatory Council of Nigeria, that's a federal body, and the signage agencies in the various states. Ajufor was talking about some of the signage agencies requiring advertisers to submit their materials to the signage agencies for vetting rather than dealing with location, and that vetting ordinarily is the responsibility of ALCON. How are you doing? Have you apprehended these issues, and how are you responding to it? And more so, what are the other matters arising from tampering with campaign materials?
At this point, I was going to make the point that now,
It seems I'll still have a problem with the connection from Lagos. Let's come back to the studio here and hear much more, from Dr. Amin Babagana Adam, Director, Department of Outdoor Advertisement and Signage here in the FCT. You earlier gave us the background of how the situation is in the FCT here. And gladly, you really stressed the fact that FCT is a center of unity. And of course, that is where all the roads end. That's why that's the convergence point for all Nigerians. And that's why best practice is supposed to be seen. And that is why everybody's looking up to for good and then best practices. But they haven't talked to us about, the fees. Some states have, paid some fees for billboards and some other things. I don't know how general that one can be across the nation, but it seems like it depends, on location and region, and sometimes states and cities. What's the situation here? Because talking about this money issue, that's why the problem is a big one in that regard, because a lot of states want to, cash on the fact that it's time for them to make money. It's time for them to increase their IGR. And of course, there's this hype about much more money needed apart from what's coming from the center. So this is the situation. And if you remember, one of the converters also said that it's a question of saying we buy all the billboards, all right? So there's going to be no space for others to, place their own, because the state has bought it, or rather the political party, I must say, has bought it. How would you react to this? How's the situation here? I'm talking about the finances and the fees, that are being charged for these billboards in the FCT.
Our rates have remained the same in the FCT, and the charges have not changed almost at all. Completely.
Since when?
I think I have been the director of that agency since May 2019. And then what we look for is the registration, accreditation of the practitioners. And if we are talking about billboards, we're talking about practitioners. When I took over, there are about 96 of them.
Yeah.
Yes, in Abuja,
Right.
about
Licensed in
96.
Abuja.
License in court. But then the process was not thorough. My observation and the reform we put in place with the directive of our honorable minister. You see, there were a lot of things happening. And you know, some of the signages, the road signs, the house numberings, people just come and put everything, or the caution sign.
Precisely.
Unfortunately, we talk a lot about climate change. You see, the more you drive on the road looking for a place, the more you emit your exhaust in your vehicle. So it doesn't only deface the city, but it adds to burning more fuel and other things. So that is why, for us, we now said, let's get the vehicle licensed and let's get the driver also licensed. So we introduced this new scope based on our honorable minister. Let me say what he normally says. It's not about the money. It's about the regulation and protecting the environment. The money is the last thing indoors we are looking for, though it is important. And let me say something again. Constitutionally, outdoor signage and advertisement is the responsibility of the local government. Constitutionally. But, you know, just like education, where UBEP and other things, primary education is taken over for better implementation. For better implementation, states come together, enact laws so that they work in partnership with the local government, so that it's a specialized unit. You know, before you erect any billboard, you have to have the current certification. You have to have a corporate license. You also need to have the licensing of the practitioner himself. So it's just the balance I use of a vehicle and the driver. If the driver does not have the vehicle license, driving license, he cannot drive another vehicle that he doesn't have motor vehicle licensing. So it's a two-way thing. It's not a one-way thing. So in the FCT, like you're talking about, my president spoke about billboards being destroyed by vandals. There are billboards erected by politicians because they have a deep pocket. They don't only use the ones erected and licensed. Some of them want to erect their own. I've been approached by several of the politicians that we want this location, we want this location. But I sit them down, and this is one of the keywords. There has to be a continuous dialogue, discussion between the political parties, OAN, and the regulatory states, either FCT, Lagos, Kogi, or any of the states. So once there's a discussion and you make them understand that if it is your office and you want to put a billboard like NTA, you can erect your billboard, you can seek for permission so that you get the permit and erect it. But if it is a third-party billboard where a practitioner is involved, there are a lot of things involved, because the structures, some of the structures you see, is about 300 square meters. So in terms of rates in the FCT, not only because it is the center of unity, we look at the economy, we want to be fair to all and everywhere. So like you said, it's the center of unity. But in addition also, you just take a drive after this program, you see that all the key players that came to us have their billboards on all the locations they asked for. And on the billboards, we don't stop them because that's the responsibility of ACON. The only time FCT will now stop anybody is if the practitioner is owing or is not accredited. Just like if somebody is not invited to a program, he cannot come and say, I am there. So this is what we use. So the rates have been, for the past 3.5 years, the rates have been since 2012 that the department was established. And even when I came on board in 2019, we have maintained same rates, but we have been strict on corporate licensing of the organization as a media outfit, and then the corporate licensing of the board of directors and staff that will run it, because you can't give what you don't have. And that is why the level of sanity. But it is of great concern that some of the politicians, the presidential aspirants, the governors, you know, even other states will want their posters in Abuja. And when you go to like our city gate, our monuments and everything, you see everywhere pasted. So we need to plead with the politicians. And there is one thing my senior brother here said about law enforcement. I think the law enforcement is not only billboards. If DPOs in every wards will do their job and they will be aided to do their job, part of their security patrolling will stop this nuisance. And if all politicians that are seeking to lead us have the feelings that we have to save our environment, I think they need to speak to their supporters not to do this illegal posting of posters. But you'll be surprised. You see senators, you see people aspiring to be your president, breaking the law or their supporters in the middle of the night, and they do these acts in the night. Let me just give you one typical example that you said Eagle Square. I think you love that place so much, just like I do.
It's the center of
You look at the bus shelters
yes.
that people put in the name of wanting to advertise their products. They put like 5, 6 shelters there. And where the police or the security officers, to be fair to all of them, are, in the middle of the night, they see them doing it, they don't talk. So I think there is a need for us to sit down and have a discussion with them that this pasting of posters on even the bus shelters put for them as a shed is illegal. They can just politely ask, do you have a permit? And I think in every state, every director, every police divisional police officer within that jurisdiction should put a call. And some of us are even doing surveillance. There was a time we arrested a bus load of Akamu pap with posters filled. We took them with the police. We took them to court during the primary elections, and the prosecution was ongoing. But a lot of people will come through the normal ways. Happily for me, I have less interference within the FCT, and we're trying to do it. But there are other politicians who also erect illegal billboards, just to buttress the point Mr. Ajafo is making, under electricity cable. And it was for one of the presidential aspirants who we insisted and removed. But you know, some politicians came to the office with about 5 policemen with guns. That why should I remove that poster? And I told the person that this is a government regulation, it's not a personal thing. And I now pointed out to them that you cannot have any billboard under an electric cable. And when I explained to him, he was educated and he politely withdrew his forces.
That is the 5 armed policemen.
Yes. So some of these things are very difficult and they are very, very challenging.
All right, Baba, let's pause you in the meantime. I mean, we all know those who live in Abuja, ahead of party conventions, party meetings, the entire Eagle Square and the surrounding areas, including the Federal Secretariat and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you see the blight of posters. I'm sure the FCTA takes time and cost to get rid of those posters at the end of such events. Osaze, I want you to speak to, I know there are other dimensions you may wish to address. I mean, you have a court appearance later, but look, is there a recognition, for instance, that destruction of campaign materials is actually an interference with the freedom of political speech?
Yes, constitutionally that is guaranteed. As you said, there are really several dimensions to it, and it also affects the process in other ways you may not directly think of. For example, the credibility of elections is dependent. So one of the yardsticks for credibility of elections is the fact that is there a level playing field? Do people have access to media? Do they have access to campaign freely? Do they have access to put on their billboards? The Electoral Act, for example, says that look, access to media is guaranteed. You know, you should give equal access to media. But other people find ways to circumvent that. It's not an absolute law. You have to pay, for example, to appear on certain programs or to get your adverts placed in media and things like that. So, but you have to look at the spirit of the law. What does it really say? Now, there are constitutional guaranteed rights, but those rights are also circumscribed by certain regulations that you must comply with. You have freedom of speech, but you cannot go maligning people, for example, and justifiably accusing them of, say, crime, for example. So we must keep on trying to give this balance in everything. With rights come responsibilities. Yes, you should not remove posters, but at the same time, you should not paste posters. Impunity on both sides. So we have to be very careful about impunity. Impunity of those who indiscriminately post things and illegally post things. The impunity, because as the director said, they will get away with it and they will feel where might is right. They bring law enforcement. Impunity because those who destroy things are not punished. And I listened to DIG Habila. I think the points were being made. Maybe it's also lost to some people. He said, look, on patrol, for example, you're not going to get dedicated officers to do this. But on patrol, every citizen, not just security agents, if I see people doing things and committing a crime, the citizens arrest. I have a power to arrest. But I will not do so if they are, say, thugs. And I know that I'm putting my life at risk or in danger. So self-help will not help you there. The main thing is to call on the security agents who have a force of law, they have arms, and they're better positioned to deal with it. But I guess value call we made here. I see people trying to rob somebody, and I see people pasting posters. I would choose what is a greater danger to society. Maybe it's from that perspective we'll look at it. But all are criminal offenses that should be dealt with. And if you say, oh, it's just tearing of posters or tearing of a billboards or things like that, but that is also conduct likely to cause a breach of the peace. Because the people who put those things up, as you rightly said, spent money in doing so. And they might not want to stand by and fold their arms and say, you destroy, that's property. You're destroying my property, and that's a constitutionally guaranteed right. I have a right to enjoy my property. You know, so these are the things that there are ripple effects which we must take note of. That don't say, oh, this is a minor thing, it's not so important, but it has consequences.
But Osaze, really, before we let you go, Lambert, you have some other engagement somewhere now. But nonetheless, we should ask you this. What does the law say, the Electoral Act, for instance, about these negative activities or criminal activities, to be blunt and to be straightforward? Politicians destroying politicians, billboards. Is the Electoral Act silent about the punishments for that, or is it left to the law enforcement agents or the politicians to deal with?
All offenses under the Act are specified, and if it comes to prosecution, INEC has the duty to prosecute. But law enforcement agencies have their own laws setting them up, and they have a duty to investigate. Even if you see somebody destroying something, you still have to arrest him and still investigate it, and then before you refer to INEC, if it's under the Electoral Act, charging them to court. Malicious damage is not known to the Electoral Act per se, so that is something that that the law enforcement agencies will deal with under their powers, under the other acts setting them up. But you when you look at the spirit of the Act, don't use intemperate language. When you go for possessions, you can't be armed. You cannot even use armed private security for quote unquote for protection. There are certain things that you ought not to be able to do. Those ones under the Act are prosecuted by INEC, by the Commission. But again, there's the Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security dealing with all security matters, including things whether they are specifically provided for in the Electoral Act or in any other act. And they plan, they strategize, they do budgeting, they do all sorts of things. It's the coordinated approach to security and law enforcement. INEC is only involved for the things that concern the electoral process. And almost everything these days, the destruction of posters and billboards, impact on the electoral process. So that is something that obviously in their meetings, they take all those things. What are triggers to violence? Not just during election day, but pre-election. These are some of those triggers. So it's something that's a consultative, cooperative approach by all agencies, and the Commission is something they use and utilize effectively.
Okay, thank you so much, Oluwole Osaze Uzi. Oluwole Osaze Uzi is a former Director of Publicity, Voter Education, Gender and Civil Society Liaison of the Independent National Electoral Commission. It's our pleasure. Thank you for your contribution this morning.
Thank you for having me.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a break now, and then when we come back, we'll continue the conversation with some of the guests remaining in the studio, and of course, from Lagos via Zoom and our Lagos Network Center. You're watching us. Stay back. Welcome back. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. This morning we're discussing destruction of billboards and campaign materials. We still have our guests here. Baba Gana Adam, Director, Department of Outdoor Advertisement and Signage. And of course, we have a retired DIG, Habila Joshak, right here in the studio. And from Lagos, we have Emmanuel Ajufo, who are joining us via Zoom. And of course, we've been trying to get real connection to Joe Onora, Director Registration Advertising Regulatory Council of Nigeria, who's joining us from our Lagos Network Center. Gentlemen, we'll have maybe a couple of, about 10, 15 minutes remaining on this program. Let's look at how we'll be able to further educate Nigerians and politicians, not really politicians, but Nigerians generally, especially the parents and then the guardians of those that partake in the destruction, because that is why the issue is politicians normally use whatever way, whatever from whatever method, Babagana, in trying to get what they want. And they really use the rest of you in trying to do that, especially the thugs and the rest of them. As a directorate here in the FCT, and talking about, experience from other states and knowledge from other states, what exactly do you think should be done? If we should take a cue from what Habila said, talking about policemen not being everywhere and security men not being everywhere to, man these spots and stop, others from vandalizing and stealing the materials. What else do we do, or what else should be done, really, in order to, curb this negative activity in the bud, or rather reduce it to the most minimal level?
Thank you very much, Ndao. I think the most important thing we need to do, I think we need to up our public enlightenment. Speak to the key stakeholders, the political parties, the politicians themselves, and then the law enforcement agencies, where we can work together, like the community policing system. I think we need to bring it on board so that we can tackle this. And then, like you said in your intro, I think the parents, because in some instances, this defacing of the city is done by juveniles, younger, below 18. If you just come out of Abuja around 8 to 11, you will see young people in the night. In the night, you see young people with posters. I just saw one as I was driving along here near the Central Mosque and the Economical Center. On the pillars that we painted with our national flag, you see numbers. We have worked with the police and the DSS to arrest people based on tracking the numbers. Okay. And we have taken them to court. But how many will you take to court? How many? So
as many as you can.
As many as we can. We have been doing that. But I think if we have a way to radically approach the issue on an analysis that will go deep down and tell them that you can pay X amount of money and have your billboard or your pestings online. But yet some people still feel comfortable. And most of these postings are fraudulent. Because somebody will tell you lunch is provided in a hotel, is giving you that. So a lot of youths are attracted. And once they go, it's different from what is put on the posters. And then, sir, most of the locations that these posters are, this business is traffic driven, view driven. So like when you go to AYA now, we have some units of law enforcement stationed there. In a good day, when you go, the entire pillars around that place is pasted with posters. It becomes a nuisance. So I think there is the way the security agencies, like we do in the FCT, the politicians, and also some of the people arrested to be educated so that it will be tackled. And then our religious leaders, unfortunately, we always resort back to them. And I think they need to preach that some of these things are also illegal. It is not only major crimes that are sins, but making us waste a lot of water, washing out this. If you go out right now, you see our staff in the FCT from doors every day washing around the Eagle Square, the airport road, and key strategic places. The water we are using to do it should have been gone for other important use. We'll have used them for other important use if people stop pesting it. You go to other cities, with all due respect, you see very little or zero of this. But here, people have not only the politicians to put up everything. So I think public enlightenment is the key word for us to achieve that.
All right, Baba Gana, thank you very much there for the perspective. The question that will follow that will be, who should initiate public enlightenment? Again, that will be the responsibility, I imagine, of the appropriate government agencies. DIG Habila Joshak, I want to come back to you. We also, and you've been our guest on Good Morning Nigeria in the past, we tend to have a national attitude that offenses that are committed in the course of electioneering are unique to elections and therefore, in a sense, somewhat tolerable. So somebody tears down the posters of the opponents I will say, look, we run this state, and therefore we will run you out of town. You have no space to expose the billboard or the posters of an opponent who is challenging an incumbent state that we run. And people get away with it. How do we overcome this? To say that, yes, even in election, you have your rights, I have my rights, and these rights are not just rights that we are speaking. These are rights that have their foundation in the Constitution. Earlier, I raised the issue with Osaze, and you listen to his response. That namely, it has to do with freedom of speech. In this case, a class of speech, namely political speech. It also has to do with your proprietary rights, that's to say your rights to property. If you have a poster is not just a piece of paper. No. It is a property. A billboard is a property. But how do we overcome this whole attitude, even from the law enforcement perspective, that it is a political thugs? Thuggery is an offense. PIG.
Yes. This politics that is being played, and people are very proud to say politics of bitterness. I think it's very, very easy for us to fix it up. The politicians must play their politics according to the rules of the games. Oftentimes, you discover that the governors themselves do not know. Sometimes they are not aware that their members or members of their political parties do things to impress and to ensure that that they have a place at the front burner of a political in political activities in a given state. And so I think that we need to ask the leadership of all political parties to sell this message that there's just no need playing politics of bitterness, particularly states that are run by a particular political party. You tend to see members, and some of them who want to impress those that are their leaders, impress them by going to carry out attacks on those of them that do not belong to that particular party. And in order to do that, I think that the government should also, the leadership of political parties in every state must be very, very courageous enough to come out and condemn and, of course, warn their members that there's a limit to politicking and that there's a limit, that they should know that politics is a game that you play to outsmart your opponent in order to get to the position of your choice that you want. And in doing that, politics is not bitterness, it does not tolerate people, using force. And if we educate them very well, this also will reduce. In other words, it is very important that we take this to the front burner as soon as the security agencies are aware that this particular practice of pulling down billboards, an attack of people trying to fix their billboard, they're going to send it to the front burner. And I can assure you that the divisional police officers and the area commanders who are on the ground will not let that happen. And so let us be very frank that this particular incident is serious as any other crime, and that if you don't need the permission of the Inspector General of Police, you don't need to do other things to be able to get attention. All you need to do is to inform those on ground, the officers that are on ground, that are supervisors, like the DPO, like the area commander, and other officers on ground, and other security agencies, that these are the problems that you are facing. And they don't need a permission to ensure that they create an eagle eye. They can also post those that are in Mufti, and they will get it done.
Yes, really, Habila, given this analysis, one would think that the police should be up and doing in this regard, and other security agents in trying to address this issue. But after listening to Osaze and even my colleague here, Kingsley, about these activities, especially in the FCT here, an example was given that even around the Eagle Square, you find policemen on duty, they are turning their is, the other side or looking the other side when such negative practices have been, practiced. And then that cannot be excusable for a law enforcement agent, but for the politicians, one could understand their, their sensibility to their own likes and kinds, especially in states where ruling political parties, look the other way around in when some of these practices are being perpetrated. Yes. The police cannot be excused, neither can the security agents would be excused in this regard, because there's even a citizenship right here. If I should be allowed, I can even arrest, but nonetheless, as they said, you can't arrest a thug because at least you have to keep you have to be, secured enough before you do whatever you want to do. So you can't just attack or apprehend.
I was just saying, sorry, DIG, let me latch on to what my colleague has asked as a subtext. With the greatest respect, is it necessarily the case that some of the officers who are on the beat actually know the law and therefore are able to enforce it?
They're very, every police officer that I've worked, and I've also gone to the training school, must have an idea about arrest, when to arrest, and what to do when you arrest. The truth is, I'm not here to speak for the police, and I'm not here to cover them up. But if you ask me to go to a particular place, to provide security, I'm not going to arrogate to myself. Looking at how these people, what are the things that these people are expected to do, and then who is to do what and what not to do. So if I see in a campaign arena or some politicians gathering and I'm asked to give security protection, I'm not going to start challenging them when I see them, pasting or putting some billboards. I'm not going to challenge them because I do not know if that is allowed. They may have taken permission. And the truth is, when you see them lining up all those posters, the police have not been told that it should not. But once you tell the police that, look, this is what we don't want, the police, they are going to enforce that. But the truth, in most cases, is that the policemen are not aware that people are not allowed to use that place to advertise themselves by pasting and by sharing leaflets and by throwing. Sometimes they just pack them and throw on people. If you tell them these are the things we do not want, I can assure you that a lot of them, 90% of them, on seeing that, they will get those people.
Okay. I was just wondering. Yes. DIG, thank you very much. Yes. But you see, even in locations where you see the sign "Post No Bill," you see all this, the bills there. That's actually what we call handbills. They place them indiscriminately.
And as Baba Gana said, they do that mostly in the night. Just you come out in the morning, you find your house
Maybe we would know what the law is, and the law enforcement officers will know what the law is, if the campaigners were to take their posters to the gates of Aso Rock and try to paste them.
If only they'll be able to get there.
If there's a notice that no billboard, honestly, the police their attention have to be drawn, because they don't know who put that. And so if there's no billboard, the policeman is not going to run after those who put that until he is aware.
Okay, now
and so you see, for him, he has made it very clear that he's been working with the police. I'm saying from the reality of things,
practical,
that they need to be sensitized. They need to be told that, look, this is what we don't want.
All right, education it is for sure.
Yes.
Baba Gana, you itching to say something.
Yes,
Have less than 50 seconds on this.
The key thing, sir, the key thing is, I think it's not about, everybody will tell you in this era, the word is, our security is overstretched. But what I just want to say, sir, is that the police know it. We have reported to them. It's a big syndicate beyond this forum will discuss. Okay. Because I did a small investigation. I can give you a phone number. You call somebody from Lagos. It's a posters.com. They come to Abuja. If you want them to put 1 million posters for you, they do that overnight and they join night bus to go. You just send them on WhatsApp the content. The police are aware. I have availed them of this information. But the only thing I'm saying is a good thing. Thanks for this opportunity to be speaking on this. Yes. I think we need to do more of it, and then we need to do the enlightenment where maybe town halls and other meetings will be held so that we can nip it at the bud, because these people are bold. Their numbers are there. So, and I know the police and other agencies have trackers. We have gone, some people come from Suleja, sir. There was a time we went into the bush with policemen and DSS and arrested one Babalao. If you go around now, you see a spiritual leader, a well-printed thing on the pillars, spiritual father, written on red. And we cannot even remove it as doors. We must bring our ladder to climb, and if you pull it, you must eat very well to pull it, because the gum he's using.
Oh, okay,
so,
not the jazz.
Not the jazz, but the gum. So we need the police, the DSS, and the civil defense that is anti-vandalization to do that, and to do it consistently and make examples.
All right.
So that people...
Very, very quickly, Baba Ghana, we're already pressed for time. Yes or no? Ajufor raised this issue of the tension between the advertisers and signage and Arcon, that there is a contest for content, that signage agencies want advertisers to submit their materials for vetting rather than being the business of Arcon, which is Advertising Regulatory Council of Nigeria. Do you have that tension here in the FCT?
Sir, is a guideline. You are not supposed to expose anything that is not certified by Arcon. So if somebody wants to expose a material and he has not done the certification, he's not supposed to put it up. That is not our challenge. Okay. But as if I'm going to give you a vehicle to go in and you are not supposed to enter with your arms without clearance, I shouldn't carry you in the vehicle. So doors is just like the plane owner. Somebody is entering with his gun and there are processes for me to disarm you. And you said, no, the paper is coming, the process is taking longer. What do I do?
You disarm the person, or
I'll have to leave the passenger
or deny him,
let him stay.
Deny him entry.
What Arcon can do is for them to fast track this process of certification so that politicians will not complain.
All right. On that note, I would like to thank all our guests, but we must apologize profusely for the Lagos connection. Lagos studios, we had some audio challenge. You could see the visuals there of Joe Eugene Onwara, but we couldn't just hear his voice. Joe Eugene, we thank you for the effort. We know how challenging it is to go around Lagos traffic. He's the Director Registration of Advertising Regulatory Council of Nigeria. Also from Lagos, we were joined by the President of the Outdoor Advertising Association of Nigeria, Emmanuel Ajufor. Thanks a lot. Here in the studios, we had Oluwole Osaze-Uzi, of course, former Director of Publicity and Voter Education of INEC, and also Dr. Baba Ghana Ada, Director, Department of Outdoor Advertisement and Signage in the FCT. And last but not the least, former DIG, that's the Deputy Inspector General of Police, Habila Joshak. He was in charge of operations. Thank you very much for your comments. So, that's it on Good Morning Nigeria today. Tomorrow is another day, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Yusuf Adabu. Do have a great day.